UDFAs, Undrafted Free Agents. Just because a player doesn't get drafted doesn't mean they can't make an NFL roster. The list of undrafted players to make their mark on the league include Kurt Warner, Warren Moon, Priest Holmes, and Antonio Gates. In fact, going undrafted can sometimes allow a player to choose their final destination, and if they're smart, they'll choose a depth chart where they have a chance. On average, about 220 undrafted free agents signed to teams after the draft. In 2023, 11% of Week 1 starting lineups consisted of undrafted players. For comparison, players drafted in the 6th and 7th rounds only have about a 10 to 15% chance of making the initial 53-man roster. UDFAs should not only be on your radar, they should be on your fantasy teams. When it comes to dynasty and IDP formats, time allows for them to sneak their way up the depth chart, but some actually show their worth in their rookie season. Last year's list of fantasy-relevant UDFAs to touch the field include running backs Keaton Mitchell and Jaleel McLaughlin, wide receivers Jake Bobo and Xavier Gibson, and linebacker Ivan Pace. So let's take a look at this year's UDFAs with the potential to make a difference, and let's do it by position. Quarterback is an extremely difficult position to find undrafted value. Last year, Tyson Bagent saw some action for the Bears, but it wasn't great for fantasy, and it was absolutely an outlier. My favorite quarterback here is actually a cheat. I do what I want! Michael Pratt out of Tulane was drafted at the back of the 7th round by the Packers. He was 12 picks away from going undrafted. Close enough. I loved his college tape. He's 6'3", he's got good arm strength and mobility for the position. In college, he threw for over 9,600 yards and 90 touchdowns. Jordan Love isn't yielding time to anybody, but the current backup is second-year man Sean Clifford, who was drafted only a year prior in the 5th round out of Penn State. Clifford is 25 years old, 3 years older than Pratt. He strikes me as a safe option, a point guard with a quick release, but he's not going to wow anyone. He's like a poor man's Andy Dalton, which leads me to believe that if Love were to miss extended time and the team struggled to keep up offensively, there's a good chance Pratt could take over. Pratt is my top quarterback option to sneak onto a taxi squad or at the back end of your dynasty roster. Sadly, most of these guys are going to be nothing more than a camp arm. The Panthers' Jack Plummer and the Colts' Keaton Slovis are in similar situations, third on their respective depth charts, but well behind established veterans. Jack Plummer has a big arm, but he's going to need years of good coaching to get him past some of those mind-bending decisions he simply won't get away with at the pro level. Blake Watson joined the Denver Broncos. Between Old Dominion and Memphis, he cracked 1,000 yards twice, and he came close a third time. Last year, he had 53 receptions for 480 yards. He had 31 total touchdowns. Watson is only 5'9", 189 pounds, but he's got that good speed running 4.45 with plenty of burst to go with it. And even though he's a little light at the position, I could see him adding a little bulk in his career without losing much speed. He has an RAS of 8.91. The Denver backfield is a little crowded right now. Javonte Williams is set for a bounce-back year, now 2 years away from a serious injury. They also drafted Audric Estime in the 5th. Samaje Perine is still on the team, and there's last year's UDFA find, Jaleel McLaughlin. Last year, McLaughlin had 76 carries for 410 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he averaged nearly 5.5 yards per carry. Coach Payton was intrigued by Watson's pass catching. He could be used all over the formation, and not just out of the backfield. He's been compared to Alvin Kamara and Darren Sproles, and if he can add something on special teams, his value only goes up. Watson was also given a $250,000 contract, tied for the second highest of the entire UDFA class. He's one of those must-add players no matter how muddy the depth chart. The talent is there. The upside is big. I'm gonna have a hard time explaining this one because it's not my usual jam. Usually when I look at an undrafted running back, I'm looking for guys with outstanding metrics. But not this time. Frank Gore Jr. joined the Buffalo Bills out of Southern Miss. He's slow, he's big. Why is he in this video? Is it just because of his dad? In college, Gore produced. He had over 4,000 yards, averaging 5.3 yards per carry, and he had 30 total touchdowns. How did he do it? Well, like Pops before him, he does one thing well. He stays on his feet. Sure, you can catch up to him, but good luck trying to get him to the ground. Gore just keeps pounding. I don't expect that to be enough to crack the initial 53-man roster with the Bills. That backfield is James Cook, rookie Ray Davis, and vets Ty Johnson and Darrington Evans. I think it's a tall order for Gore to leap anyone in his rookie year, but I can't write him off. Gore is not a must-add. He's a plucky might stash. The rest of these backs have more pop and better metrics, but I wouldn't be surprised if Gore was the one still hanging on a roster 3 years from now, even though it's likely with a different team. Jalen Coker joined the Panthers out of Holy Cross. He had 3 years of good production in college. He's 6'1", 208 pounds. He runs a 4.57. He's got an RAS of 8.54. He was a name going into the draft. It was a little surprising no one took him. Either that speaks to the depth of this draft class at receiver, or maybe they were deterred by the level of competition he faced at such a small school. Steve Smith called this guy the best route runner in this class. He primarily plays out of the slot. Last year, he had 59 receptions, only 2 drops. That's good hands to the tune of 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns. And when you watch his film, you see a dude ready to get it. He makes the tough catches, contested catches, falling to the ground catches. He puts himself in position to win the catch against DBs. He's a technician, not a physical freak, and that might be his way onto this roster. The Panthers drafted a physical freak this year in Xavier Legette. They already had a couple of athletic speedsters in Jonathan Mingo and Terrace Marshall. Coker could be playing behind another UDFA on the Panthers, 33-year-old Adam Thielen, who plays the slot. Gimme shares of Jalen Coker, learning from and eventually taking over for Adam Thielen. Joshua Cephas joined the Jacksonville Jaguars out of the University of Texas at San Antonio. There, he had 313 receptions for over 3,600 yards receiving and 28 touchdowns. He's 6'2", 189 pounds. I didn't find any metrics on him, but I can see from his tape he's got decent speed. He's a big boy with a large catch radius. He swallows up passes and has a good first move after the catch to gain yardage. Cephas has got a pile of bodies to climb over just to make this roster. He's no threat to Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis, or rookie Brian Thomas Jr. He probably won't even threaten Devin Duvernay or Parker Washington either. But there's a chance he could sneak onto this depth chart with a good preseason. He's one to stash until the dust settles. Dallin Holker out of Colorado State popped up on teams' radars before he joined the New Orleans Saints. During the gauntlet drill at the Combine, he seemingly forgot about the last pass before snagging it one-handed. He's a little undersized for the position at only 6'3", but he's got decent metrics outside of that. He saw very little college production in his first 3 years at BYU, but last year, with Colorado State, he racked up over 64 receptions and over 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. Holker is shifty with the ball in his hands, which is not something you usually see with a tight end. He's got a knack for getting around defenders for extra yards. He makes cuts and accelerates more like a running back. Make no mistake, this dude is special, maybe in ways we haven't seen yet in the NFL. Holker is currently buried behind another UDFA in Juwan Johnson, 33-year-old Swiss Army knife Taysom Hill, and Foster Moreau. Holker's just one more weapon at the position. He could very well work his way into the rotation this year as a rookie. I don't think he'll ever be a tight end 1, but he could still be very valuable to the team, if only on a part-time basis. McCallan Castles is a bit of a mystery for me. Before joining the Eagles, he did very little at Tennessee, and even less at Cal. The production isn't there, but the traits are. That was enough to get the Eagles' attention, and it should get yours. He's 6'4", 244 pounds, and he's got great metrics across the board. Castles has an RAS of 8.59. The Eagles have taken undrafted tight ends before. Jack Stahl is an example, but Stahl was never anything more than a blocking tight end. Castles has a better athletic profile, and blocking is one of his weaknesses, so I think he's going to get a long look for his pass-catching potential. The Eagles' depth chart is Dallas Goedert, who's approaching 30, 6th-round pick Grant Calcaterra, who profiles very similar to Castles, 31-year-old CJ Uzomah, and human question mark Albert O. Castles is likely bound for the practice squad, but it will be interesting to see the camp reports about him. He's one to keep an eye on. Linebacker Gabriel Murphy joined the Vikings out of UCLA. He's 23 years old, 6'2", 247 pounds. He's a little undersized, but super athletic. He's got an RAS of 9.28. In college, he had 148 total tackles and 21 sacks over 5 years. The Vikings linebacking core seems pretty set, but considering UDFA Ivan Pace cracked the starting rotation last year, it doesn't seem impossible for Murphy to earn a spot. Inside linebacker Lavelle Bell was picked up by the Broncos out of Fresno State. It wasn't a surprise he didn't get drafted. Lance Zierlein listed him as a priority free agent, but just because he didn't get drafted didn't mean the Broncos weren't after him. Sean Payton reportedly liked him, and the Broncos gave him a $125,000 guaranteed contract. He's 6'2", 225 pounds, so he's a little undersized. His RAS is trash, look away, but his tape shows a player in the right place, making the right moves. He had 277 total tackles, 6 interceptions, and forced 5 fumbles over 5 years in college. The Broncos have a need for more depth at his position, after they lost Drew Sanders for the year already due to a torn Achilles. There's room on this roster and opportunity for Lavelle Bell. Maybe I just like linebackers because the Chiefs' Curtis Jacobs is another favorite of mine, and he's got all the athleticism we were missing with Bailey. 6'1", 244 pounds with a good 40, a high motor, and an RAS of 8.47. At Penn State, Jacobs had 171 total tackles, 9.5 sacks, and recovered 4 fumbles. He's explosive, especially when working in space. The Chiefs have decent starting linebackers, but they need depth. Curtis Jacobs could be more than depth over time. Bleacher Report named him as one of the most exciting undrafted players at Chiefs camp. Pro Football Focus named him the Chiefs UDFA to watch. Safety Bo Braid was picked up by the Ravens. He had 177 total tackles, 3 interceptions, and 3 forced fumbles while at Maryland. In 2022, he led his team in tackles. He was expected to be drafted in the mid to late rounds. That is until he tested poorly at his pro day. He doesn't possess elite athleticism, but he hits like a hammer and he's a sure tackler. The Draft Network listed Braid as the most likely UDFA to make the roster. The Ravens could certainly use some depth at the position after last year's standout Geno Stone left for the Bengals. Bo Braid is 22 years old. That's my list of undrafted free agents. Who did I miss? Who's flying under the radar and needs more love? Leave your comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.